Welcome to South Carolina Live, episode 44 at the Voice of College Football. I am your host, Walker Gaskins, and we have an amazing guest today, Lauren Beasley from College Sports Wire USA Today. So thank you, Lauren, for coming on. How's your day been?
Been pretty good. I appreciate being on the show today.
Yes, of course. And before we start, guys, to all those watching, I know we have a lot to talk about, and we are going to get into that. But if you haven't already, follow me and Lauren Beasley on X. My Twitter handle is WG Sports _CFB. And then as you can see on the ticker below, LB Knows Ball. So that's where you get relevant, up-to-date college football, college sports, and Gamecock football content. But to kind of get into the segment today, everything with the South Carolina NIL legislation, it's kind of felt like a whirlwind these past couple months on top of kind of just everything happening in the national aspect of the college landscape as well. And recently, South Carolina legislators had a hearing to talk to some of the athletic directors, Clemson, South Carolina's, Coastal Carolinas, to talk about this new bill that was introduced into the legislative house about keeping NIL contracts private. So could you tell me a little bit about like what's the goal from the legislators' point of view when it comes to trying to get this bill passed?
So the South Carolina law right now, it just deals with what's public and what you can see under the Freedom of Information Act. And so the bill was introduced in January, and it was fast-tracked through the House and the Senate, and it was passed overwhelmingly 111 to 2. And now it's sitting on the governor's desk right now for him to sign. And Henry McMaster has said publicly that, he's questioned the transparency of the legislation and of the NIL and the entire program. He quoted saying that venturing into college sports, that stuff like this with the NIL is undermining college sports as a whole. And so we'll see what he says about it. I don't know when he's going to sign it or veto it, but the proposal actually deals with an exemption of the state's Freedom of Information Act, which allows the public colleges like South Carolina Coastal, Clemson, and the revenue sharing contracts to keep them confidential. So under this bill, the universities would only be required to disclose the total amount that is spent on all athletes for these deals as a whole, instead of, the individual contracts would be private, protecting the student athletes, and then the documentation dealing with negotiations or the sport-specific allocations when it comes to how much is spent on football versus how much is spent on basketball or baseball or whatever would be private. And the only thing you'd be able to see is just the big picture pretty much. And, there's a lot of people that support it. There's a lot of people that don't. The supporters kind of say, it'll protect athletes from competitive disadvantages where it'll turn into a bidding war. If you see what, one athlete is making, another school could come in and say, well, I can pay you, this much more. And then it turns in, like I said, to a bidding war. And then, people who are against it, they don't like the secrecy. They, would rather have the transparency of where's the money going. They're making thousands of dollars of donations, and they want to know exactly, where their dollars are going, which is fair. So, it's hard to find a middle ground, and we'll see what McMaster does with the bill.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe vetoes it for maybe some amendments to the bill,
right?
Because I think there's different ways you can approach this, different mindsets. Firstly, from like the taxpayer point of view, your money that's going to these public universities, or just as a someone who's donating, if you don't know how that money is being exactly spent, how can you guarantee that it's actually being spent on what you want it to be? Because I'm trying to think, imagine if I donated money to something not even sports related, education related, to the Thomas Cooper Library or something of that sort. How do I know my money's not going to college athletics?
Right, exactly. And I think that's what people are worried about. And I told somebody the other day that I likened it kind of to, you go to a restaurant and you get a bill and it just has the total that, that you're required to pay, but it's not itemized. So you don't know exactly what you're buying, and you just have like the total bill. So it's fair to wonder where your money, especially with big donors too, they want that transparency, and that's fair to know. I think maybe a middle ground would be if they could redact the specific information, like the players' names, or I'm sure they could probably whittle it down to one or two, based on how much the amount is. But I think there is maybe a loophole that they can kind of make everybody happy, or at least most people happy. Not everybody's going to be happy with it, but we'll see.
Yeah, and whenever I was kind of just trying to do some quick some research on this topic before the show tonight, I thought an idea popped in my head. And before I even say the idea, considering the fact that NCAA already has its own issues as a governing body, I mean, this would be kind of out there. But I think it would be nice personally if we had a third party type of organization or company that sole job was to analyze where these financial donations and the NIL money comes from without disclosing it to the public. I think the idea of having a separate body whose interest is not for certain programs or for college athletics, but simply for the integrity of how the finances from the university are being spent. I see no reason that if the government can be inspected on how it uses its money, what's the difference between that and maybe college athletics?
Yeah, and when they came out with the NIL, they had the opportunity, I feel like, to get ahead of that and to have that kind of checks and balances where they could have controlled it before it got to this point, and now we're trying to backtrack to control it. So, and there's no federal governing body for the NIL or anything like this. So, now it's kind of everybody's scrambling to figure out what they're going to do. And there's already several states that have, the entire NIL deals are shielded completely. In Kentucky, Colorado, or Utah, Arkansas is one of them. So I think it needs to be, in my opinion, just the same across the board also with all, college athletics.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I have the feeling that no matter how the solutions that you throw at this or the problems that come up, nothing's really going to get fixed until, like you said, that uniformity. Because I believe just today or just yesterday, Mississippi, their government just passed something helping Ole Miss and Mississippi State significantly with NIL situations. And if I'm, to play a little bit more devil's advocate for the universities and the athletic directors, why would I think Donati actually said this. Why would I volunteer myself up first in my university first, to be honest? Because I guarantee you, I mean, we already see the scandals in college athletics, football, whatever it may be, over the past 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, especially this offseason.
Especially this offseason. So, like, especially if I'm a Clemson's athletic director, like you already have situations like Ole Miss is already stealing players from you, and all this information is supposed to be kept private. Imagine if it was public.
Yeah. So, and I definitely agree with that part of it. I don't think that they should know what individual players are making. They're not public and they're not employees. So it's a big difference between what publicly what coaches are making and then what the players are making. It just creates a mess.
And to kind of add a question onto basically the whole big mess of questions we have right now, do you think it would be a good idea, or do you think it'd be justifiable to make these athletes who already get a free education, who get tons of benefits, revenue sharing with the university, and sometimes thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, do you think it'd be right to make them college employees? Do you think that would benefit them in any way, or make the financial integrity a little bit more positive than what the situation is right now?
I think that's such a sticky situation. They get to a point where they want to go, they're not here to play ball because they simply like to play ball. That's just how college athletics are now, unfortunately. There's still some players that do, but I think a lot of them are chasing the dollar. And it's kind of like, being employed and you are doing one thing, that you enjoy doing, but then another job comes along so you can do the same thing, maybe even do a better job, starting, quarterback or whatever, and they're offering more money. I think anybody would, as an employee anywhere, oh, I can do the same thing or do something better for more money, then I'm going to jump on it. So if they want to act like employees, then yeah, they should be treated like employees. They'd have to definitely regulate that though, because even that could get out of control. But I think if, millions of dollars, if I was 19, 20 years old, I wouldn't know what to do with that kind of money.
Yeah, I'm around that age, and I don't know what I would do with $1 million, $2 million. But on top of the fact of being a college athlete, getting a free education, all the perks and benefits of being an athlete, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. And so, how could I trust others to know that their money is going to something like someone who's going to spend it responsibly? I mean, we've seen plenty of cases where people go blow money and all that type of stuff. And there was actually a time a couple weeks ago I was talking to somebody I know, and they made the argument that we should be able to pay players, which I think that's I agree with that. I think that statement's correct. However, there should be a limit, not just the school can spend $20.5 million because $3 million of it might go to a quarterback.
Right.
That there should be a cap limit for those players, like a maximum of 100,000, 500,000, and honestly, I'm not in the shoes of many of these players who come from, low income families who need this money, right? Because, your career isn't guaranteed. You can get injured at any moment.
Right.
I'd say every time someone tries to argue against that, I bring up the quarterback from Ole Miss who played in the bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like 2020, and he got injured, and he ended up going down like 6 rounds in the draft. But do they really need $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million compared to maybe 100,000, 500,000? Because I think that would not only satisfy, some people who are worried about how much money one specific 19 or 20-year-old's getting, but also might make you feel a little bit better about how the wealth is being spread.
Right, exactly.
Sports,
I agree with that.
Players or sports others than just football.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that there should be a cap on it. I think that makes it a little more fair. Then you can spend money on other athletes, but also like they're still in school. I feel like they should also have to take financial classes, because like I said, I would not know what to do with that amount of money. And I think that would only benefit them in the long run to know how to deal with money, or even have something almost like a trust where you get so much money up front, but then when you graduate, then you get the rest of it, and because a lot of them don't finish school either. And, that's a big part of it too, because going to the NFL is not guaranteed, like 1% of players, actually succeed in the NFL. So I think that they should have their education to fall back on also. But if they would just have more, like I said, just regulations, rules, and I think it'd just be smarter with the whole thing, that it would benefit everybody across the board, but especially these young athletes.
Yes. And shoot, my mind kind of just blinked. I had exactly what I was going to say, and I just forgot. I think another solution to this possibly be that, let's say that NIL stays the same, like players can still make $1 million, $2 million. I think you could make an argument from a certain angle that if you brought back the one-time free transfer and then after that you have to sit a year, that would kind of fix it. Because, what if you get offered $500,000, but you have to sit a year because you already transferred to one school you're at? So I think it's unfortunately one of those situations where each topic is so big, you have to have a huge discussion about it, but you can't solely put the blame on the situation for that. So no matter what conclusion you get to, someone can say, oh, well, if the transfer portal was like this instead of this, or well, if college athletics was like this instead of this, then this wouldn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a big wheel. Say you've changed one thing and then it involves something else and might, shift something else. It's just a mess. And it really makes, it makes college athletics a lot less fun than it used to be, honestly. I still love it, but it's just a lot of red tape.
Yeah, it definitely feels more like free agency, and
Yeah.
it's really, I think it's really hard from the fan perspective. I think so often we get focused on the player and the university side because that's the two where the financial interaction's going. But just the average fan, I mean, um, having guys, yeah, I mean, and there's good cases of the transfer portal and NIL. Like when Spencer Rattler came in,
Yeah.
he instantly like when I started getting into college football is the year before he came in. So when he came in, just guy who remade himself and
Yeah.
really helped elevate us. He'll always have a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
But in so many other cases, such as Juice Wells, we don't really want to talk about him, or other guys, it's hard to get loyal to guys who, how do you know they're going to be here next year?
Yeah. And I think, of course, I'm closer to the South Carolina program than any other program, but I feel like South Carolina has such a special bond with players. I haven't seen as many former players that still, tweet or post about South Carolina and, talk about it. And it still feels like home to them. And they come back for the games and stuff. And I think that it's definitely more special here at South Carolina when it comes to former players like that. But I just don't see with all the transfers and everything, it's harder for the younger generation to cling on to one or two players that'll be like their players that they'll remember, until their grandkids about and everything. But I think South Carolina probably had, like, for me, I mean, obviously there's like several players, but Marcus Lattimore, even though I was still watching football way before that, but Marcus Lattimore always just, he'll have a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I certainly think, I've said positive remarks about Beamer. I've said, whenever I think there's things he's been doing wrong, but one thing I'll always give him credit for is the culture he's built here. Yes. And his ability to recruit. And I think South Carolina fans are lucky to, yes, we've had situations where the transfer portal has been a lot of drama for us, but I think we're certainly more blessed than a lot of other schools. So I try to be grateful of that fact. Right. Whenever I try to come back to the ground on that. And I really hope that the NCAA can get its stuff together if it wants to, and that hopefully this gets discussed at that roundtable upcoming with the president. Like, I hope these things get solved because it feels like a ball of yarn, and the faster we're pulling on it, it's just the more it's going to get out. And I think the longer it takes till we fix it, it's going to be the harder to bring it back to where we used to have it and where we want.
Yeah. And I think the longer it takes to fix it, we're going to run into more problems too that we're not even thinking about right now, in the long run. So hopefully they can rein it in and kind of be like, even if it's something that we don't all agree with, I think if they come out and say, this is exactly what we're going to do, whether you like it or agree with it or not, and this is just how it is. And eventually everybody will just, just be the new standard. So hopefully that we can get to that point where we just know what to expect, and it's more conversations about wins and losses rather than how much players are making.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But we're going to start switching topics here. I want to go ahead and share my screen just for those who may not be up to date on the spring ball schedule for South Carolina. Here it is for you. Another reason you should follow me and Lauren on X and on the social medias. But as you can see here, this is the timeline for spring practice. We have a few sessions and then spring break. Pro Day is going to be March 17th. So guys like Rasul Faison, Jalen Kilgore, Brandon Sissy. So we're wishing him the best of luck. And then from March 18th to April 11th is going to be the bulk of spring practice and really the bulk of what we're learning about this team. But of course on April 14th is when Shane Beamer's finals presser is to kind of round out spring ball. But I want to talk to you, Lauren, about the Garnet and Black Spring Fest. So obviously this is something new this year. It's a concert to replace the spring game due to the reconstruction efforts at Williams-Brice. Can you tell me a little bit about the spring concert, the Garnet and Black Fest?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously with all the construction that, like you said, at the stadium, I would rather have the stadium ready to go in September. So, doing something different is fantastic. So they'll have a block party prior to the concert that night, and they're going to be blocking off Green Street in Lincoln down by the CLA. And so from 1 p.m. till the doors open for the concert at 6, concerts at 7, but from 1 until then, they're going to have the players there for signing and meet and greet, free drinks, food, and just kind of a fan fest, which I think is if you've got to find an alternative, that's a good one. I secretly hope that we would have had like a scrimmage like South Carolina and Clemson. But I love the spring game. I hate that we can't have it. I understand why we can't have it. I do hope it comes back next year because I do love the spring game. I think it's such a great family event, and you have a bonding. You get to be able to see the team up front. A lot of people don't like it because it risks injuries. And then there's a couple teams last year and the year before that started canceling their spring games, or they had them closed to the public because they don't want other teams, scouting out their plays and whatnot. But so the Fan Fest 1 till 6-ish, and then after that, there's the Darius Rucker concert, and I bought my tickets today. Not bad. I got 2 tickets for $135. So it goes on sale tomorrow to the general public, and the tickets range from, I saw about $30 till about 90, 100-ish. So not bad. And actually before that weekend on April 3rd, there's another street festival that they're having to honor Steve Tannehill. And I don't know how much that's been pushed and publicized, but that's going to honor his life. And that's going to be down by Group Therapy, and it's going to have live bands and stuff. So you got 2 weekends of a lot of music and fans and Gamecock stuff going on. So I think that's great.
Yeah, it certainly looks like some good events happening in Columbia. I will give credit whenever we do community events. It seems like South Carolina does know how to put up something fun, whether it's pregame stuff, or stuff like this.
Right.
And I personally was hoping for like a secret scrimmage as well. Right. But then I heard the news about I think it was Colorado and Syracuse, the NCAA, and their ultimate wisdom denied their spring game they wanted to play against each other. So at that point, I kind of accepted it probably wasn't going to happen.
Right.
The thing to me is like I totally understand why we don't have a spring game. Like I think you're unreasonable if you're sitting there trying to scream and get mad at the fact they don't have a spring game. But I'd say the 2 things that kind of instantly went to my mind, and when I've been talking to people or seeing posts online, kind of I think I've seen the same thing reflected, is one, the kind of lost opportunity to recruit. A lot of players, high school recruits, attend these spring games. Right. And, every year during whenever the buzz for high school recruits and recruiting trail like lights up, especially in July, I'll read a lot of those articles. And one of the things they'll mention is how much they love the spring game.
Yeah.
How much they love the atmosphere. And that's something I've always loved, because South Carolina, if you ask me, obviously a little bias here, but I think we're the most underrated atmosphere in the country. 2001 Sandstorm, and I think being able another chance to show that in the offseason to players is something I think has always been very beneficial. So from that standpoint, it sucks we would not be able to show a lot of high school recruits that. But also, I will say, you made some comments about your opinions on the Garnet and Black Fest. One of them being kind of the financial aspect of it. I didn't know the price beforehand. You said it was about $30 to $90.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, depending on where the seats are. And I love Darius Rucker. He's one of my favorite singers. I've been to so many concerts of his. He's a phenomenal human. So nothing against him. He does have a tour that's starting also. Mm-hmm. And especially after this season specifically, I understand, I don't know what all entails for the Fan Fest. I'll have to see it when I get there. They said free drinks and food, and like I said, the meet and greets and everything. And it sounds like a lot of fun. I wish that there could have been some way, and that's kind of why I brought up the Steve Tannehill thing the weekend before, because there's DJs and there is a headliner that's going to be there.
Mhm.
So that's not a concert that people are going to have to pay for. And I wish that they could have found some way to do that for the Spring Fest, because this year was extremely trying and exhausting for everybody. We had such, high hopes coming into the 2025 season, coming off a 9-4 winning season. So, it was disappointed. I think a lot of people just lost hope in the team and the coach. And it would have been nice just to have something that kind of gave back to the fans. Like, we appreciate you because we ask you to show up every game, and y'all are showing up and selling out when we're, 4 losses halfway through the season already, and you're still selling out games. So, that's one part of it. And like I said, I bought the tickets today, so I was happy that they weren't, overly expensive. But also, not everybody's going to go to the concert either. They might go to the Fan Fest and they might not go to the concert, or vice versa. They might just want to go to the concert and not go to the Fan Fest, but it's right there at the CLA. So parking, if you're just going to the concert, is, probably not going to be fun to try to get through that crowd to get to the CLA. But they do a good job with security, and so hopefully that will not be a mess like I'm thinking it will be. But and then it's Masters Week. So it's the Friday of Masters. And so I'm going to use the Fan Fest to almost like tailgate. I'm going to try to bring a TV or something so I can watch the Masters until it's concert time.
Yeah, I'll definitely be watching the Masters if I'm not there. To bring back to the kind of financial point I wanted to hit on, I definitely agree with you. It doesn't I'm trying to figure out how to word this. On top of the fact that the 4-8 football season, how the baseball and basketball seasons are going this year, which is obviously very poorly. And then also combine the fact that basketball and baseball was also poor last year.
Right.
With the amount of support that we show as a fan base, because I saw that we ranked like 5th or 6th in the SEC in attendance, considering the fact that we only have 76,000 seats and we had 79,000 on average a game.
Right.
So when you combine that with literally like the conversation we just had about the financial contributions to the university, I wouldn't say the ticket prices and how they're doing that is a slap in the face. I think that's a little strong. But in a way, it just feels like, like, really? Like, come on. Like, and it doesn't even, like, if you wanted to charge prices, that's great. But like you said, like a charity or something.
Right.
A local hospital, Harvest Hope. I mean, there's tons of organizations in the Columbia community that we would love to see get benefited from something like that. But it just almost feels like, as in, hey, we know we've been asking for your support. We know we've been asking for your money. Haven't done anything with it yet, but I promise if you give us a little bit more for a good time and get to listen to some music, then things will actually happen. And it's like, at what point does the South Carolina fan base say, like, enough is enough?
Right. And I think, I wrote a couple articles about just that. We're pumping so much money into a very mediocre product, and we didn't go to a bowl game. We didn't even go to a bowl game this year, so that should be the bare minimum. That shouldn't even be we hope we go to the bowl game. That should be the absolutely bare minimum of any football team in the SEC. But I do feel like, and especially with even the construction, there's a lot of people that are losing their seats, with the construction of the stadium. So it does really feel like a slap in the face. Like, okay, we've taken your money for, this many years, and you've donated, to the Garnet Trust, and you've done this, and then you buy season tickets every year, but then we're taking your seats. Oh, and, if you want to come to this concert, you have to pay even more. So it really, I think people would be more inclined to really support the concert, especially if the proceeds did go to a charity, and but I assume it goes to the CLA. So, but
Yeah, Yeah, it really boggles my mind because it feels like we have the homegrown talent in the state of South Carolina. I know
Yes,
we're not Florida,
absolutely.
Texas, California, but we have talented kids in the state. We're not up there in like with Miami, Ohio State, and Michigan in terms of financial support, but we're definitely better off than a lot of teams and a lot of schools. We certainly have the fan base. Oh my gosh! And
Yes.
every other fan base I've talked to, like in person, whether I'm at games, like the Kentucky game or the Clemson games I went to in 2021 and 2023, obviously didn't have a good ending in those games, but those games, and even when I went to the bowl game against Illinois last season, actually 2 seasons ago now, which by the way, those Illinois fans were some of the craziest, most rude people I've met. I'm sorry, I have to say it. I mean, I had someone behind me yelling at me for standing up during a football game. So
Yeah.
I regret buying, in retrospect, like I get saving money for the away seats were cheaper, but in retrospect, probably should have sat with my own with South Carolina fans. But even talking to them, they said, we don't know. Like it seems odd that you're not a perennial powerhouse,
Mhm.
not even perennial powers, like perennial 8-win, 9-win team
Right.
because of all the support and the location you have. And I don't know if part of that is the fact that like we're one of the few schools that has another Division I school like 100 miles in every direction. I
Mm.
don't know if part of it's the chicken curse that unofficially exists. Um, I don't know
For
what
me
it
too.
is, but it definitely feels disappointing from that point because it seems like we have everything to make it work, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, and football's the exception to that. At the, our men's basketball team is not doing great. So I've noticed several. I've been to 2 games, but one of them was fairly full. The other one wasn't. It was pretty empty. But I see posts all the time. The seats are empty. For the basketball games. Baseball, I haven't really paid attention to, but you know, every game, the football stadium is just sold out, and I can't even be mad at the student section emptying out early anymore because I don't want to sit there and watch that when
Yeah.
it's that bad. If I had been at the Texas A&M game, I definitely would have left early. But it really is how long are we going to continue to support the program when there's no, return that we're getting, and it's just mediocrity every season. We just kind of coast. And like you said, the talent is there, the coach is there. Beamer's fantastic. He's one of the few coaches that wants to be here. A lot
Yeah.
of coaches want to coach, but they don't want to be where they are. And I think that he loves this team in this city, and we love him back. And he's a great fit. It's just we cannot get all the gears going in the same direction at the same time. And I want to have hope with this new offensive coaching line for next season. And I do this to myself every year. I get my hopes up, and but we'll see. Maybe this is the change. I will say the off-season Beamer has been a very different Beamer. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes come September. The first 2 games I think are a lock. Maybe even 3 or 4. But it's that mid-season and then the back stretch of our schedule this year that's brutal.
Yeah. It definitely, I saw the schedule release and, like, I'm pretty sure we knew beforehand that we were playing Georgia. And like, it was at the point where they did like week 3 or week 4. And I was like, okay, let's hold on. And then they come up in week 11. I'm like, whoa,
But right
Georgia,
before
Georgia,
Clemson.
the game before Clemson. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So that definitely caught me off guard a little bit. And I'm going to show a comment from Roger Scott. Hey guys, whose money was it before the players got any money, and where did that money go? Um, Short answer: before NIL, it was still donors' money. It just, of course, was under the table, probably in a white envelope to their pockets, and they just weren't supposed to say anything about it. So I am glad in retrospect, like I am glad that we did start paying players because I do think they deserve
Me too.
compensation with how big
Absolutely.
the entertainment industry is with college sports. Um, so, but to kind of shift that point to Coach Beamer, Like, I think, yeah, absolutely. He loves to be here. I'd say him and Don Staley love it the most. It almost feels like a competition between which one pours their heart out the most for this team sometimes. And we certainly love Beamer as well. I just think the frustration has come from just results, specifically because, and I say this literally with the most objective mindset possible. South Carolina is one of the few teams I watch in football where at the end of so many games, I don't think, hey, that team was just the better team that day. I think we just shot ourselves in the foot many times. We don't have any toes left.
Right.
And so it's definitely disappointing. But I was actually talking to Chris Marler about a month ago or so. He came onto the show. So shout out Chris for coming on. And we kind of talked about like how well this offseason was, because you look at where we were after the Clemson loss, 4-8, highest season expectations. Everything seemed like a disaster. And it really felt like we were one domino away. Lenoris transferring, or Lenoris going pro, Dylan Stewart transferring, anything, Clayton White leaving. There were some rumors of that possibly happening. And I think not only were they able to turn that around and hire some amazing coaches, even when they got caught off guard with like Sterling Lucas leaving, but then also being able to go hit amazingly in the transfer portal as well and fill a lot of holes that we had and really revamp a lot of rooms. So that certainly gets me excited, because the thing I've kind of said is, right now is kind of the season for all the early expectations, the way too early rankings. And as fun as that is, I try to hold off on that. But what I have said and what I will continue to say is, I'm not telling you right now that we're going to go 5-7. I'm not telling you right now we're going to go 10-2 or 12-0. But I'm saying right now that if I had to pick on whether we're going to have a good or bad season, I would lean towards good, because everything that I've seen so far, all the evidence points to that, with the hires that we've had, with the guys we brought in the portal, with the guys we've been able to return. So I've certainly been looking forward to that. And I've actually been really looking forward to spring ball as well. And obviously that starts March 4th, which is 2 days away. So I kind of had some questions, and obviously you can go list on about all the questions you could have about spring ball. I mean, there's a million, but I kind of just try to narrow it down to a few. And one of mine, and I think probably the biggest on everybody's mind, was, what will Kendall Briles' offense look like in Columbia? What are you trying to kind of expect right now with Kendall Briles? Because I know it's a different situation. I know he adjusts to the style of the quarterback, so it's never the same from place to place. But I think a lot of South Carolina fans are interested in to see what we should at least somewhat generally expect. Yeah,
and I think you could generalize it and just say anything would be better. So I'm glad that he didn't go after somebody with the NFL tempo type offense. So, I was afraid of that they would try to get somebody in that was going to run. And I mean, that works for some programs. It does not work in South Carolina, high tempo. Definitely. I think they're going to, with the wide receiver splits and just some explosive plays, I think is what we really need. And being able to finish the game and finish a play, I think is going to be so much important. That's where we stumbled so much, like you said, like shooting ourselves in the foot. There was plenty of games that we should have won. And I have said for years and years that South Carolina is that team that we lose the games that we're supposed to win, and we win the games that we probably should lose. And that has been our MO for a very long time. So, I think his offense will work for South Carolina. I have to see it to believe it. But I think he has a run first mentality, which it hasn't always been the thing at South Carolina. And I think that will work well with some of the players that we have. And I'm waiting on the first couple reports that come out of spring practice, because I think that's going to be like, it's like Christmas Day. I want to see what's going on and see what they're changing up and what they're doing. I'm so grateful that Stewart and Sellers came back. I really thought Sellers was going to leave. I'll be honest, and I was really like, well, what are we going to do now? But I'm glad to see them back. I think that's very important for a lot of reasons, and but I have a lot of faith in the offense and in Kendall Browse, and I like I said, I don't expect a 10-win season at all, but I think realistically 6 wins. I would be happy with 6 wins at this point, and then I just being realistic. It's a tough schedule to begin with. People really take for granted just how tough our schedule is. We have one of the hardest schedules in the SEC, and people forget that. So, I'm not going to be delusional. I think 6 wins, and I'll be satisfied with the new hires and what we've done on the off season.
Yeah, I am. Maybe this is sounding a little too aggressive. I just personally, as a fan, I would feel a little disappointed with 6. Like, logically thinking, if I had to pick over or under on 6, I might say over, not like 9 wins. I think 9 might be a stretch right now.
Yeah.
But maybe I could see 7. You could argue 8. But I would say it feels almost disappointing that we have a generational guy like Lenoris, like Dylan, like Nick Harbor, and I really hope we get more than 6 wins, not just because I'm a South Carolina fan, but just because it feels like, those are generational talents, and we happen to have 3 of them at 3 different positions. But speaking of Dylan Stewart, you brought him up, and I kind of wanted to make a point of this. The other question I have is, we know Dylan Stewart is one of the best edge rushers in the country. I mean, I can confidently say no one's worried about his ability and his talent during spring practice. Right. But how is this edge room going to look opposite of him? Because, there's a ton of possibilities. Could Jaquavius Dodd or Anthony Addison take strides since the end of last season? Obviously, one of the big edge guys we got in the transfer portal was Caleb Herring from Tennessee, because we originally were going after Chaz Coleman from Penn State. We got Caleb Herring. Could he be an instant impact guy? How about Drew Collins from Arkansas State? Or even guys like George Wilson, who had a preseason injury last year. Julian Walker from Dutch Fork High School, who was a 4-star edge, and I think he's either the number 1 or the number 2 player in the South Carolina in this last class. I think it's really interesting, and I'm not trying to sit here and try to guess who is going to be starting opposite of him. My mindset personally, and I want to hear your mindset as well, but my mindset personally is I'm fine with whoever's going to be opposite of Stewart, as long as they can make the impact to where I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. It feels like we already have we brought in a ton of guys at the defensive tackle position. Experienced, older guys who know how to play football at the Power 4 level. We have a guy like Dylan Stewart. I feel like if we get a guy who can make those plays that we need opposite of Stewart to take away attention from Stewart and the rest of that interior defensive line, I think we could have a type of performance from that room, maybe not to the same level as 2024 Kyle Kennard, TJ Sanders, Tonka Dylan, but something that reminds fans of that, kind of something similar to that level.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what you're saying. I don't know who would play. That's a good question. And then with the new the edge coach too, it's hard to tell what exactly will happen from here. But I definitely think that they're going to put in, Dylan Stewart as much as possible, and but playing, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah. And that's honestly the same, because there's been the past couple episodes I've been doing position room breakdowns and trying to project the starting lineup heading into spring ball. But every time, before I go into it and right as I wrap it up, I make it clear, hey, not only am I not working with the Gamecock football program, but this year is probably the most unpredictable.
I was about to say, yeah.
It feels like left and right, the offensive line, especially now with Jacarius Peak missing spring ball. It's what's going to happen there? The wide receiver room, I could argue Jaden Sellers was obviously kind of the more slot guy near the end of the season, slot wide receiver. But I mean, just the year before was Mazeo Bennett. And we remember how electric he was as a freshman. And I think if he wanted to transfer, he easily could have. Just like kind of Brian Rowe transferred to, I think it was UCLA. So I think you have questions there. You could Donovan Murph, Nitro Tuggle, Jaden Gibson. And then you talk about the edge room. Where's Quashid Scott going to kind of play into this defensive back room? Who's going to be kind of the safeties? I think that obviously spring ball has always had an element to it to where they're competing. But this year it feels like I'm less focused on how developed they are schematics wise and just figuring out who's going to be the starting guys heading into
Right. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, I feel the same way. This is the first season that, I get the same question and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I really don't know. There's options. We did a great job with refilling the roster on the off season and, going into spring practice. And once those reports start coming out, I'll have more confidence about it. But it really is one of the most unknown seasons I think Carolina football has had in a while, to where, predicting stuff like that and the starting lineup is, it's hard to tell and it's hard to even predict, but I'm anxious to see what they're going to do and how we're going to line everybody up and what the coaches are going to do in practice. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will. Just a quick question. I mean, this doesn't have to be like a big breakdown. Is there like a position room that you personally have like a favorite that we've kind of got, whether we brought some guys in the portal, we have some returning guys? Is there like a favorite room you have? Because I certainly have one. That's the running back room. I'm very much glass half full when it comes to this running back room next year. But what about you?
Yeah, I agree. Running back room, that's been a big running back and wide receiver, two positions that, I always am like, okay, I want to see what we're going to do, who they're going to put in. And it hasn't always been especially wide receiver hasn't been, the strength that we've had in past seasons. So the running back room, yeah, I'm definitely curious to see what they're going to do this season.
Yeah. For me personally, with that running back room, I feel like so many people, and at times I get caught doing this. I get caught up in trying to care more about who's starting rather than what impact they're going to have. Like personally, like I like Matthew Fuller. I think he's really cool, especially after they popped off that LSU run. I like Christian Clark. Go look at the tape he had against Michigan. It was his first ever start against a good Michigan defense, and I think it was the Citrus Bowl, and he had like 100 yards and a touchdown, or 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. I like Jawan Howe. I like Jabriz Coleman, Sam Dixon. Like I like all of those. I like all of those guys, but I think one thing that we tend to get too focused on, whether it's the fan base, is just who's going to be starting rather than impact. And when I say that, I mean, if it's Matthew Fuller, that's great. If it's Christian Clark, that's great. If it's Jawan Howe, that's great. What I care about, like specifically, is impact-wise. Last year we saw what happens when Lenoris has to try to be Superman every single snap.
Right.
Right. And as talented and as great as he is, you can't expect that of anyone. It's an unrealistic expectation. And a lot of things, and whenever I brought that up, I brought up the fact, look at what was different from 2024 to 2025. Now, obviously, you could say Mike Shula, the offensive line, all of that. But my thing was, what about the specific supporting cast and the skill positions? I mean, last year, he didn't have Josh Simon as like a safety net that he did in 2024. Rocket Sanders wasn't someone that or last year we didn't have someone who could take away attention from the defense like we did at Rocket Sanders in 2024.
Right.
So specifically, like with that running back room, I want someone who can not only, be a good running back but really take away 100% attention from Lenoris, make those linebackers hesitate before they just rush right up the A gap and try to sack Sellers, so that's why I like the running back room specifically, because I think that obviously it depends on how good our offensive line can be. Obviously last year we saw 11 rushing yards per game. So clearly our offensive line needs to work before we can even talk about any of this. But I really look forward to that because I think if you add another rushing attack to that offense, it's just going to make it easier for Lenoris to be able to play how he likes to play.
Yeah, I agree. And I said a couple times last year, and a lot of people actually agreed. He felt like he was just held back almost, last season. And if they just cut him loose, I feel like he would do what he wants to do, and I think he would succeed at it. I do see Matt Fuller starting, but he's competing with those 5 transfers too. So, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I like Matt Fuller, so we'll see how he does. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I certainly hope it goes well. I think right now, personally, I'm not going to try to guess the energy of the entire fan base. I think right now I'd put it slightly below cautious optimism. I think that, I think if this was 2 years ago, heading into the 24 season, if this was the coaching staff and the portal we had, we would be cautiously optimistic. I just think right now we've seen so many ups and downs with the Beamer era. It just feels like a roller coaster. As much as I love Coach Beamer, the ups and downs eventually, I think, turn a lot of fans into cautious hope to I need to see it to believe it. And then I'll really, jump on.
I think a lot of people are there too. And even last year, I think a lot of it was a lot of the frustration came from the press conferences too, with Beamer just saying repeatedly, well, we had a great practice, well, that's on me. It got repetitive instead of just, I think fans would be more inclined to, support and feel better if he just was like, we sucked and we did this wrong and we did this wrong, but we're going to get on it and try to fix this. And I wish he would stop talking about the college football playoff, but give me some realistic hopes. But last year, after a 9-4 season and kind of being slighted with that, I was like, what, maybe this year, but of course this coming season, I definitely am not thinking that, but yeah, I think the fan base is kind of in between being cautiously hopeful for the 2026 season and being, give me 4 games and then we'll talk.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel like that our fan base is at a crossroads, kind of like you said. And it honestly feels like that's where this football program is. It feels like we're one bad season away from having a restart and one good season away from, bringing back a different kind of energy in Columbia again. So I think this spring practice is probably going to be one of the most anticipated that we've had in a while, despite the fact we don't have a spring game, unfortunately, that Garnet and Black Fest. I think it's April 11th.
11th, yep.
Yes, with the good old Darius Rucker, of course. But Lauren, I appreciate you coming on to the show today. It's been great to talk to you. For those who are watching who may not know Lauren, amazing sports writer, amazing person in the Gamecock community and just football and sports in general. So she's a writer for the College Sports Wire, USA Today, Garnet and Cocky still, right?
No, I actually don't work for Garnet Cocky anymore. Just College Sports Wire. I actually cover the entire SEC for USA Today now. But Carolina sports is always close to my heart. So I will always be a homer. It's hard to be unbiased when I write articles and South Carolina is involved, especially when I do rankings, because I hate ranking them so low. So I need our team to do better so I can move them up that list.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on. For those who don't see it, scrolling below, LB Knows Ball. That's her X handle. So that's where you get a ton of great football content. For those who aren't following me, thank you for watching today. But please subscribe, like the video, please share. Not only it helps me and the Voice of College Football Network, but also gives you more Gamecock football content. And once again, follow me on WG Sports_CFB. I know we do weekly shows here, and they're great and they're fun and amazing. But if you want relevant by the hour, and oftentimes by the minute recruiting updates, college football updates with South Carolina. That's where you should follow. So that was South Carolina Live, episode 44 at the Voice of College Football. Big shout out again to you, Lauren. Thanks for coming on. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Have a good night and go Gamecocks.
Good night. Go Cox.
Hey, y'all. This is Grant Sassery of LSU at the Voice of College Football Network. I'm here today